What if the biggest barrier to women's leadership isn't a glass ceiling, but the mask we've been wearing to get there? Welcome to Talent Talks. Today we're diving into a conversation that's long overdue. We're exploring the shift from I must prove I'm worthy to I know I'm worthy, and why that transformation is essential not just for individual women, but for the future of leadership itself. Emily is joined by Dani Cee, founder and brand strategist of the Happy Life Agency, who knows this journey intimately. Dani climbed the corporate ladder all the way to chief marketing officer, twice, only to realize she wasn't happy. More importantly, she discovered that the version of herself she'd created to succeed wasn't actually her at all. Today we're having what I call a solution-based conversation about women in the workplace. Yes, we're going to acknowledge the challenges because pretending they don't exist hasn't gotten us very far. But more importantly, we're talking about what comes next. How do we move beyond the extremes and find what I like to call the sensible middle? We'll explore why psychological safety isn't just a buzzword, how authenticity can be a competitive advantage, and why the conversations we're not having about women's experiences are costing organizations more than they realize. Dani will share her framework for helping women step into their authentic leadership presence without sacrificing who they are at their core. This conversation is for every woman who's ever felt like she had to choose between being liked and being respected, between fitting in and standing out. It's for leaders who want to create environments where people don't just survive, they thrive as themselves.
Thank you for joining us this morning on another episode of Talent Talks. I am your host, Emily Alvarez, and I am very excited to be joined this morning by a guest all the way from Texas. Her name is Dani Cee, and she is the founder, speaker, and leadership coach of the Happy Life Agency. Thank you so much for being here this morning, Dani, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Emily, thank you so much. And thanks for having me on. I'm so excited. You're correct. I'm the CEO and brand strategist for the Happy Life Agency. And I started this agency because, I was in corporate America for about 20 years, two times chief marketing officer. I got all the way to the top and I was like, I'm not happy. And one of the things that was really frustrating me was how women were treated in the workplace. One of the things that I loved doing branding. I loved, brand continuity. I loved knowing like, hey, that's not the right font on that poster. But more than anything, I loved developing my team and helping them show up in their gifts. And so when that was my priority and I noticed that it wasn't a priority for the organization, there became a mismatch. And so I had to really like look deep inside me and, what my life I had built and say, is this really what I want to be doing? And so I let go of that dream job. And I've started this company to help women be able to show up as a confident authority in the room and to have that strong voice and to build a brand that aligns with their identity. So when they have to go toe to toe in these workplaces, unfortunately, we do have to go toe to toe. Or, if they want to get on stage and they want to create a movement out of their mission, then I can give them the tools to do that. And so that's what brought me here today. So I'm thrilled to be on and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, welcome to the show. Happy Life Agency. It's really a great mission leading women with purpose through finding themselves through their worth, right? Which is really important for us today in the workforce, in leadership roles, especially, which is really kind of the ethos of this podcast today, is really talking about women leading from their purpose and finding their worth through transformation and finding their presence, right? Like establishing their presence, which is not always easy for us to do, especially two women coming from corporate positions, long-standing careers, right? Male-dominated fields, both of us. And so it hasn't always been easy, especially coming up during times where uh, we saw probably more organizational change under older generations. So I would say more like boomer generation to like early Gen X. I'm a Gen Xer too, but like I had some, earlier Gen Xer bosses at some points in my career.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's interesting. You and I were warming up before the show a little bit, and we were talking about women in the workplace today, right? Which is kind of a good start to this conversation. I was listening to a podcast, and I'm not going to say which one, but it was talking about women in the workforce today and how we've made so many advances, right, as a gender in the workforce today, specifically around becoming welcome into leadership roles, into C-suite roles. We have a seat at the table. And sort of the ethos of this podcast was, women now, we have the Me Too movement, right? We have
Mhm.
rights. We have the ability to um, sit at the table with men. So really, what's the point now of women kind of complaining or victimizing themselves? That was the term that kept coming up. Why are you victimizing yourselves into saying that you don't get the same opportunities anymore, or like you're not at the table anymore with men and in the same light? And I was sitting there thinking to myself, and I'm not one of these feminists that are like hardcore out marching in the streets. I've never been one of those. I'm more of a silent advocate. But I was deeply offended by that
Mhm.
because we as women, even if we have made progress, if you think about it, we've only had the right in this country to vote for a little over 100 years. We were allowed to vote in 1920, to
Mhm.
give that perspective to the younger generations, since they don't teach history in high schools anymore. Um, but 1920 was when women were given the right to vote, right? And
Right.
then we now still have psychological scars
Mhm.
from a lot of the stuff that we saw our grandmothers, our mothers, our aunts, our sisters, our cousins, you know, female family members go through.
Yeah.
So explain this to me, because as a person that studies women's development in the workforce, I mean, I'm sure you have some strong opinions about this too, because we carry a lot as women and have carried a
Absolutely.
lot to get to where we are. So I can see your
Absolutely.
blood boiling a little bit.
You can. It totally is. Because I did get that seat at the table. That was my goal. And let me be completely honest, is like before I had a child, I was probably that woman that was like, "Pfft, I don't know what all of y'all are complaining about. Just
Yeah,
climb the
right?
ladder, work
Yeah,
harder, get your seat at the table." But
yeah,
the whole reason that I started this mission and this movement for, the happy life was because when I got to that seat, I wasn't happy. And
right,
it was it was because like you asked me to be a woman in a man's world and act like a man in order to have this seat at the table. Where
right,
now I have a child and I've got all of this cognitive labor and all of these household duties that are going on. And so that whole mantra, check your problems at the door, you can't do that because now I'm raising a
right,
human.
right.
And it's acceptable for men to do that. But women, I mean, there was an article in the New York Times that even if a man is the primary caretaker, he still outsources that cognitive labor and that scheduling 64% of the time to his
Yeah,
wife, even if
yeah,
she is working. And so it's like there hasn't been enough of a shift. And if there was, then we wouldn't have the epidemic of loneliness. We wouldn't have the epidemic of depression, anxiety, burnout, all of the things that are kind of crashing and burning right now. Because what women do really well is they have what's called broad spectrum notice. And we can
mhm,
walk into a room and we don't just see the bottom line and the numbers on the wall. We see the people, we see what they can do. We understand and want to hear what's going on and then be able to bring that together into a process and structure that's highly functional. And if you
right.
go back to your, boomer generations that you mentioned, is let's talk about HP, one of the most successful companies, a fabric of our society. And when you read the history of that company, the two guys who started it, when they were recruiting, they went to the homes of the people that they were recruiting
Yep,
and they bounced the baby on their knee and they saw the house and they had conversations with his wife and they ate dinner and they said, you know what, we got to know you, we know what you're going through, but here's what we're going to do for you. And they laid out an offer that made sense for that individual. And now here they are, 100 plus years later, still around.
right,
So if we don't go back to those foundations and valuing family and valuing what women bring to the table, then we're going to continue to have this downslide because we are in a really, really rough spot. I think yesterday Amazon said they're laying off 30,000 people,
yes, yep,
and it's because AI can replace their jobs. What if we had had a conversation about, hey, there's this thing called AI. Let's talk about what you love to do here. Let's talk about what you're good at. And let's figure out a partnership between you and AI and the job. And how can we make this company better and not get rid of all of our people? Because they're still
right.
hiring too, right?
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I probably went
Yeah,
in a lot of directions there, but
no, it's totally fine. I think you're hitting on something really important there, which is, first of all, if this wasn't still an issue, we wouldn't still be having this conversation.
exactly.
That's the way I look at it, is it still keeps all these years later coming up, but
Yes.
it just kind of keeps changing slightly the mask it wears, right? So the way I
Mm-hmm.
see it now is now in certain terms DEI is under attack, right? Which is kind of it's become a highly politicized issue,
Mm-hmm.
and it's trickling down into the workplace, right? Because it really is at the core of it, it is a recruiting and workplace issue,
Mm-hmm.
a workforce issue, because it really depends on creating opportunity. It's also a sports issue. It's also a college, an education issue. There's a lot of things that this actually touches that we might not
Mm-hmm.
think about. That not only does it touch from a perspective of creating opportunities in these specific spaces, but then it also has lasting effects on things. So it's very important that this is taken seriously and we understand the repercussions of this. But
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't still be having this conversation if it wasn't still relevant, right? And
Exactly.
I also believe that that idea of going back to a concept of understanding the fact that a family, because really when you hire somebody, you're understanding that you're kind of hiring their whole family in
Mm-hmm.
a regard, like in that
Mm-hmm.
regard, because really, I mean, you are.
Mm-hmm.
When people go home at night, they're not necessarily talking about like the new process my boss just implemented at work, right? Unless it like
Right.
directly impacts your ability to do your job in a way that you're like, I'm never going to be able to do this. And so I'm probably going to get fired, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
probably like going to have to like leave because there's just no way and I'm miserable. Like, if it's like something like that, then maybe, but people don't go home and talk about like, oh, do you want to hear about the boring new like process we implemented at work today? No, they want to talk about where we're going to have a vacation, or if we're going to be able to have a vacation this year, or what our benefits are going to look like. If I'm going to get the raise at the end of the year that I thought, and how much that's going to be, because I factor that into what our family can spend um, for budgeting and, Christmas presents or whatever holiday you celebrate, or, like those things are the stuff that gets talked about.
Sure. Yep.
That's the important stuff. And so we've kind of like moved away from that at workplaces and done this like one size fits all mentality,
Yes.
and not this like all size fits one. And that's problematic because we're running into a lot of the value-based and cultural-based problems in the workforce that we are today, including what women have experienced for so many years, which is, not thinking about scheduling and new moms and like, just finding simple ways like Amazon. Um, Not saying, maybe there's some other directions we can move people into. It really affects the psychological safety, which is essentially what we're talking about with women. It affects our
Yes.
psychological safety to have these things still coming up, woven into the fabric of an already kind of deteriorating fabric that's already fragile.
Mm-hmm.
It's already
Mm-hmm.
fragile from years of problems that have happened with it. It's like telling an African American person not to feel a certain way about slavery.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
concept, really.
Right. Right.
So,
You know what's interesting here is that there are companies. I have a podcast as well. It's called The Happy Life Agenda, and I have interviewed women who have started their own companies. A lot of out of the same necessity of like something has to change, so I'm going to start a company. And one of them, she has like one of the fastest growing luxury real estate brands in America, and her workforce went from 40% to 72% when she started focusing on the needs of women. And
right.
so they are able to if you have a baby, you need to breastfeed, you can, be on the meeting but have your camera off, or you can work from home that day, or you need to go pick up your kid and then jump back on. They accommodate for all of that, and she said the better we got at accommodating for that, the faster and better our company has grown, the success. And so, as women, we go and we're judged because, like, if we're single, not married, we get married. Now there starts to be the fear of, like, oh my God, is she going to have a baby? Oh my God, is she going to want to leave? Well, no, I
Right.
wouldn't want to leave if you were able to give me the flexibility to still be a parent. And even like for husbands too, because I've seen a lot of stuff on
Oh
LinkedIn
yeah.
where men are starting to say this as well. I want to be a present dad, but the stigma is, leave before the kids get up, get home after right before dinner's going on the table, and then it's bath time and
Right.
bedtime. That was my life. And it took me forever to get pregnant. And so when I had this beautiful little girl, and I don't ever get to see her, like, what am I doing with my life? And
Right.
so whether you have kids or you don't, is having the house and the car, the white picket fence and the golden retriever and the 2.5 kids, is that really worth all you do is get up and go to work? Because it's not the 1980s and 90s anymore. You can never turn it off. And that is the expectation.
Right. Well, it almost makes you think like companies should almost like do benefits or packages, like depending upon where you're at in your life, right? It's almost like because the way I look at it is like people that are certain ages, right, are going to have different needs
Hmm. Hmm.
typically than people that are, and I'm not even saying this by age necessarily. It could be like culturally, different
Hmm.
people need different things.
Absolutely.
And there are different even genetically, there are different things that affect us, even that come up at different stages of life, right?
Hmm.
Like women, we know with women that there is a certain stage in our life that they recommend that we start getting mammograms, right?
Hmm.
This
Hmm.
is something, breast cancer, we know kills a lot of women in this country.
Hmm.
We have an
Hmm.
entire month dedicated to breast cancer awareness, right?
Hmm.
Why would we not have something like that built into our company like our company benefits, where it's like, okay, we have all the women in our company, like if they're over 40 and they can't afford to do this, we're going to do it for them.
Hmm.
These are the things that matter to people, right?
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that everybody would be comfortable with this. It depends on your company's culture, but these are things that could be done confidentially.
Hmm.
It could be done through HR. That could be done, and again, I don't know what the specific laws are around stuff like this, but HR handles our medical records, right?
Hmm.
So I would assume where there's a will, there's a way. But it's about looking at like things that are important to specific people within organizations and looking at what can I do to help? What can I do to offer assistance? And that's not just women, that's men. That's, same thing for prostate exams,
Hmm.
colonoscopies. Like these are things we know kill our people, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I just feel like when we talk about these invisible stresses and these ideas of, knocking down these stigmas around like gender and bias and the way that we underrepresent, these are ways that we can level those playing fields, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
treat each other better.
Hmm. One of the questions whenever I'm coaching someone is, foundationally, what questions should you ask yourself? And it's, how can I bring value to the situation? A lot of times people say, how can I help? But that's a very open-ended question, and people don't even
Right,
often know what they need. And
right,
so as a leader in an organization, when you have one-to-ones with your team and you sit with them and you say, you make it a safe space for them to be able to have a conversation about how they bring value to the organization, how you value them, but then
right,
also talk about the things that they like and they don't like, the things that they see wrong with the organization, the things that they see right, then you're able to create shifts. And for me, I was able to do this in my department, and I had a very successful department. We did really well. Everyone loved working together. We
right,
produced a lot. But the problem was is that once you got outside of my department, these things weren't, valued. And at the very top of the organization, they weren't asking that question. How can I bring value? How is your team bringing value? Except
Right.
on the dollar sign. And
Sure.
so once I left, I still have stayed in touch with people. And that's the number one thing is like, people want to be seen and heard and valued. So whether it's their health that's the, at the forefront, or if it's they're taking care of kids, or like, myself included, there's a lot of sandwich generation people out there. We're
Yeah.
taking care of elderly parents and we're taking care of kids,
Yes.
which means that I can still do my job, but I need the flexibility to take my mom to the doctor and my laptop.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I also need to take my daughter to dance
1000%.
and my
Yeah.
laptop. And
Yes.
so, but I worked for someone who, it was all about my rear end being in the chair. And I could have been playing solitaire and probably still collected a paycheck. Now, for
Right.
me, I can't do that because I love working. I love being a contributor. And so, to the way that you started this conversation, whatever podcast that was that you're listening to, is the complaint is I want to contribute. I want to bring value. And
Right.
you're making it so hard.
Right.
Like, and I mean, and I think, like I said, I see men having this conversation too. We live in a day and age where we can have the phone, the laptop, any of that anywhere. So just pour into people and find out what they love, and they'll show up for you, and they won't be doing their laundry or going to Walmart when they're supposed to be doing their work because they're excited to do their work and they want to be a part
Yep.
of this mission.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. And even if, and my thing is like, even if they're doing something like maybe they stopped for 10 minutes to do a couple of dishes while they're, like at the same time, like they're probably going to be extremely productive if you're taking care
Mhm.
of them.
Exactly.
That's the thing is you're right. It's about conversation. And I think that's where we get caught up, where these guys on that podcast I was talking about were talking about this victim mentality, or like we get into this, and I if I play the devil's advocate, right, which I do often because I'm a podcast host and I'm also
Right.
the mother of two teenage girls, right? That, well, one's almost 21, but I still, they're, for all intents and purposes, they fight like teenagers, right? So I have to play the devil's advocate a lot. But the thing is, I mean, if I look at this situation from like, I really have to rack my brain to that side. I look at it like, okay, if I'm in their brain and I'm looking at the situation, okay, I can maybe see how they would say, okay, yeah, they're kind of playing the victim card a little bit. Okay, because I do see that to some degree. I do see people that really do milk it, right? They're like,
Sure.
oh my gosh, like we're treated so poorly. And I'm like, well, we could go back to 1919. We could. We could even go back to 1950 if you
I was
wanted
gonna
to.
say through my
I
head.
mean, we could go back to the Stepford wife thing, but like I don't think you want that either. That wasn't the
Mm-mm,
fun
mm-mm,
times, right? You
mm-mm.
might have been able or allowed to sell Tupperware. That would be fun, right? Have a Tupperware party at like 11 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday and get, sauced with our girlfriends. Like we could do that, but I don't really want to do that. So I get it. But the thing is, I think with the victim stuff, like I just think that if we stop swinging the pendulum so far to both sides of the issue and stop with the whole like everybody that wants to be like complaining is doing so loudly
Mhm.
that it's drowning out the people in the middle that are like, look, I would love to just have like, I don't know, maybe a day where I don't know, maybe like a couple extra days off a year, or maybe like some flexibility to like take my elderly mom to the hospital when I need to, or maybe some flexibility to like take my kid to camp or like go watch sports games, like, because my kid's in like football, or maybe like to have mammograms like once a year because I'm over 40 and like it's really expensive and I can't afford it, or like whatever the case may be, right? Like we sit down and we ask our people. We used to do cleaning bonuses for our
Oh,
people. They could earn cleaning bonuses because we were like 70, and this is not again a gender thing, but we were like 75% working moms. You know
mhm,
how much of a
mhm.
godsend that is to have somebody come in and clean
Yes.
your house once a month? Because you're a mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
you got kids and pets and husbands and partners and, whatever the hell running through your house at any given time. Like, that's a godsend to have someone clean your house.
Yeah.
And we
Sign me up
didn't
for
make
that
it
job.
hard to earn it either. Yeah. So like we asked, like, what's important to you?
Mm-hmm.
And then that turned into you could either get a cleaning or a travel bonus. And we would put like that money in a travel fund if you preferred that. So you ask people what's important, but you have to have
Mm-hmm.
that conversation and it's meant to evolve.
Yes.
And you can't
You
just
know,
have one option either,
right.
typically.
Well, you know what I love that you're saying about that is because all of these companies have all of these perks. They got a ping pong table and they've got
Yeah,
nap pods and they've got, they'll take you out to lunch or they'll order in, hot wings. And I would say that 90% of the time in my experience, I didn't want that stuff. The food was unhealthy. I don't want
right,
to be at the office playing ping pong. I don't even always want to go out to happy hour because my spare time is with my family. But if you
right,
can get my house clean, guess what? Now I can free up that time to either, work on a project that's needed my focus, or I can, spend that time taking my daughter to her dance team. Like there's so many things that
right,
you can do when you ask people what's important and what they truly need. But we just come up with these arbitrary perks and nobody really wants them. And I mean, I've been in a lot of companies where we sit around and talk about the stupid perks.
right. Well, it should,
So,
to me, they should be something that contributes to somebody's self-worth.
yes. Hmm.
It shouldn't be something, like you said, arbitrary.
Hmm.
That's the thing. If I want to do something arbitrary, like, not that anything is really arbitrary, because I think if people are putting forth an effort, it's intention that matters, right? But so if someone has the intention to say, I did something nice for you, like that's important because sometimes people really do give what they can give. And so that's important to recognize. Some of these mom and pop shops, which is like 80% of the country, I totally get. Maybe all they can do is buy their employees lunch on a Friday. Maybe that's all they can do,
Right.
but some of these bigger companies or organizations where I really am like, what on earth? Is when I see their corporate team go to these like like I don't know, they spend $50,000 or $100,000 on these corporate retreats for their
Mhm.
C-suite people, and then I know because I've been at one organization that was like this and it did not last long. Their bottom line people and everybody else is like, where'd the entire executive team go? Oh, they're like in, I don't remember. It was like some tropical Bora Bora or some BS or like something like that. They were at some
Mhm.
tropical retreat
Mhm.
somewhere. Well, all
Mhm.
the rest of us were like, at the office holding down the fort, which is fine, I guess. But like, they weren't doing any of that kind of stuff for like the people that work there. So it was
Right.
like a slap in the face because you have your entire team that's making money for these people to take off and do that, basically leave the entire C-suite empty at the same time. So again, like it's about intention and like really looking at, are we just reaping the fruits of our people's labor and sending that message? And I think women specifically have women and minorities, I think, have gotten that short end of that stick for a long time. And so to say that we're a bit noisy about it is like, yeah, again, there's always the extremist, but I think we've earned the right to be a little noisy about it. In fact,
Mhm.
because our psychological safety has been threatened. And I think, again, like this is our attempt to regain our self-worth. And so it's up to employers to meet us halfway at least and be like, hey, I mean, I would say they owe us more than that, but it's like to say, hey, like we need to really do things that impact and show that there's value because most people just want to be part of a purpose. And so it should align with that purpose of like, hey, I see you,
Mhm.
not just like,
Yeah.
here's a free lunch. If you can do more than that, like do more, do better, you know?
Right. I mean, a lot of times the lunches are to keep you at the office so that you'll
Yeah,
keep working.
right.
So the intentionality is very important. But I think, it's not just women, it's not just minorities being loud. There was a recent study, I think it was in 2024, 85% of the global workforce is dissatisfied with their jobs.
Oh, there's
So
no
if the
question. Yeah.
Right. And if that isn't a wake-up call for organizations that something needs to shift, and as you said, it's become about the bottom line. And so, I think that there needs to be credit and attention and value shown to every level of the organization.
Yep.
Because when you do get to a certain level of the organization, there are expectations and there is stress and there is weight. And technically some of those retreats and things should be to
Right.
be able to go away and focus on strategy and team building, because if that unit doesn't get along, then
Right.
the rest of the organization suffers. But what's happening is it's all checking a box. There's no intentionality behind it. There's no
Correct.
specificity behind it, and we're not looking at it as a whole. It's just like, okay, we have a C-suite, so we're supposed to do these retreats, and here, let's go on them. And by the way, I've been at the C-suite table, I've been at the C-suite retreats, and it's really nice. But I
Yeah.
felt like it wasn't a good use of my time because, again, I
Hmm.
thought I was going to have strategy, get to know my colleagues better. And instead, it was just like, hey, here you go, guys. Let's try to get together and go have some drinks and dinner. And it's like, why did I just give up all of my time away from my
Yeah.
family for this?
Yeah.
So it's companies need to really start focusing on people, and that is what women do very well. And so we come back full circle, is like, we live in a patriarchal society. We haven't placed value on the things that women are really good at. And if we don't stop asking women to show up as men in the workplace and start saying like, hey, what do you think about this and how can we get everyone on board, and then bring what men do well, bring it together, build structure, build communication, because that's at the heart of all of
Right.
this,
Right.
then I think organizations will flourish, people will flourish, and we won't be seeing what's happening now, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, I agree. And I think stepping into that presence is the big thing, really being able to know who we are inside, right? Which is also what I think is the heart of your work, right? So talk about your work with women specifically, because this is really the heart of what you do is you help women step into their brand and their presence without really sacrificing who they are. But a lot of times you find out that you really kind of help them discover who they are, because a lot of times we don't even know who we are. This, myself included, happened to me, and I'm sure it happened to you. You get caught in this, like, almost like a snare, like a corporate trap of like, I have to be this person.
Mhm.
And then if we're doing introspective work, which we all should be, we sometimes step out of that and we're like, holy crap, that mask just came off. And now I'm like, who am I now?
Yes, yes.
Right?
That's, yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, that's exactly what happened to me, and that is what I want to impart for women. And, corporate America was just a piece of that. It started, and it starts for all of us when we're very young. And a lot of women, both men and women, it can happen to, but for women, it happens a lot more because there's a certain expectation from society on, the makeup, the hair, how you show up. And so, we get into these perfectionist tendencies, or I think you and I talked about on the warm up, imposter syndrome, is like,
Yes.
who is
Yeah.
the world telling us to be, and so that is who we show up as. Well, then you start really like caking on this pieces of this perfection, and
Right.
what that means is that you're performing and you're living up to everyone else's expectations. So really, you doesn't exist anymore, and it's just pieces of someone else's definition of perfection. And I had done that. And I grew up in a male dominated household, very loving family. I mean, when I go back and sometimes, I talk on my podcast about this controversial stuff, my mom asked me, she's like, oh my God, were we not good parents? It's like, you're amazing parents. In the
Right.
80s and 90s, we didn't even have these conversations, right?
Oh,
And we didn't even know. And parents are growing up with their kids. I mean, parenting in the world of AI and something I didn't grow up with. I didn't even grow up with social media. So
right.
parents are feeling their way through this stuff too. And how does it impact identity? I mean, if you read The Anxious Generation, they talk in there about, I think anxiety and all of this has gone up 139% for the 18 to
Right.
25-year-olds. And
Right.
why is that? It's because suddenly there was this thing called a smartphone. No one knew what to do with it, much less put guardrails on it. I mean,
Right.
I would say because I was late to the game and having a child, I'm putting guardrails on it because now I get the benefit of the social dilemma and all of these conversations.
Exactly.
But we learn as we go. So
Right.
to that point is you establish, I help women go back and establish what their core values are, and this can be done for men or women, and say like, what is the thing that's really important to me that wouldn't have changed in all this time? Like for
Right.
me, I love family. Family is so important to me. I've always wanted to travel, so freedom is important to me. And then being able, abundance or wealth is important to me because I've always wanted to take care of the people that, whether it's my daughter, my husband, my parents, anyone, that's always been something that's important to me. And so the way I pursued that was climbing the ladder. But that came at the cost of freedom and family. So now that the mask has come off and I had to spend all of this time figuring out who am I really, and whew, that is an exercise that is so tough. No one should go through it alone. And
Right.
because you will spend a massive amount of time like turning left, turning right. I mean, I love clothes, I love makeup, and but it's not the cool thing for women to step into their femininity, right?
Right.
But yes, it is if you like it. So what I help women do is if you, however you want to show up. My best friend, we're polar opposites. She is a jeans and t-shirt girl through and through, and she always says, I could never do what you do. If I can set up the expectation that you can show up in a room and be confident, and you can wear your jeans and t-shirts, and you can have the conversations, how much easier is life going to be when you can just be yourself? And that's
Right.
it all flows. And so this is kind of like what we've been talking about here is when you develop a team and you develop their talents and you make it safe for them to talk about what they like, what they don't like, what they're good at, what they're not good at, and even also observe them. Then now when they come into work, they're just operating from flow, which means they're not having to put on airs, pretend to be somebody else, sit quietly and worry if what they say next is going to be judged. And they can just show up. So I want to give those tools to women. And with 15 years of experience in marketing, not only do I coach you on how to show up in your identity, develop a brand that aligns with your true identity, but now here are all the assets that you need. Your one sheets, your
Right.
headshots, your media reel, all of those
Right.
things we give to you, so that if you want, because here's a fun fact that I posted on social media is 80% of expert resources in the media are men. 80%. But do you know it's not because women aren't given the opportunity? It's because we turn it down because we're
Yep.
scared.
Hmm.
And so if I can give women all of the tools to be able to show up as themselves and be confident in showing up and having that conversation on the media, how would things change, Emily? Because, men are having a really, really loud voice. Women need to step into that power. They need to have their voice. They need to own it. And yeah, okay, we're not playing the victim anymore. You're giving me the opportunity. So come on, let's take it.
Right.
And that's what I do.
Well, yeah, and I love it. And I think the interesting thing is, I mean, self-esteem, we know that self-esteem for people in general is at an all-time low, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
COVID had a lot to do with that. We went through a very lonely time as a country,
Hmm.
as a world,
Yeah.
and social media doesn't help this stuff at all. I mean, there's this extremely warped. I mean, it's not even real anymore. Really, our
Mm-mm.
idea of what we should look like, shop like, think like, do like is an avatar, right?
Hmm.
Because none of this stuff online is real. It's a filter, it's a lens, it's AI, it's a robot. Like let's be real, most of the time can't even tell what's real and what's not anymore.
It's,
You can't.
yeah, it's becoming more
And
challenging.
so, yeah, and so we really don't have a concept, which is kind of refreshing if you think about it, because I can kind of be like, well, I'll just start over then with a blank slate because none of this shit's real anyway. If you think
I
about it,
mean,
none of it's real. It's like a fabrication of like what we think is pretty, what we
hmm
think is right, what we think is socially acceptable. Okay, well, guess what? That's all just like there's no possible way a human can aspire to that because it's not even real. I mean, I guess if you wanted to like go get plastic surgery and do all that stuff, but we've all seen the tragic end of some of those stories. I mean, a lot of that stuff has become like cautionary tales.
hmm
So
hmm
I think with women and with people in general, it's become the idea of sustaining this idea of perfection is exhausting,
yes,
right?
yes.
And so you're better off, or we're better off, to figure out, to your point, what our values are, what we care about culturally as humans,
Hmm.
not as gender, not as this, not as that, not as labeled, not as blah, 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 blah. But what is like important to us as humans, because we all need to operate under like, I don't know, this thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like we all have needs that need to
Mhm.
be like given to us as humans for us to, I don't know, survive. Like that's important. But
Mhm.
all the other stuff along the way is noise,
Mhm.
right? Then we have our psychological needs that have to be met, right? The five love languages. Like we have stuff that needs to be met to make us safe and comfortable.
Mhm.
And usually, if you're operating within those things, you're going to be okay
Mhm.
as long as you're doing those things in a positive way. And I think with women, we have pressure on us that's different than a lot of other than like men in some capacities, because there's already we're kind of already have like the deck stacked against us in a lot of ways. Men typically
Mhm.
compete with each other.
Mhm.
They don't typically compete with women, right? But women do compete with men and each
Right.
other,
Yeah.
which
Yep.
is
Yep.
like, a whole other layer of stuff. So yeah, it gets challenging. Men only typically compete with women when it affects their ego, which is
Which when
kind
we
of
get a seat at the table.
yeah, that's kind of a jacked up thing. So, I mean, I think sustaining it is what's hard because it becomes exhausting.
Mhm.
So, why focus on the perfection angle? Because you're never going to match it. It's not real.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Exactly.
so, my thing is redefine what that success looks like.
Yes.
Because I learned this doing this podcast. Actually, we interviewed a couple of ladies that talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And
Mhm.
um, I didn't know this until we did the interview with Dr. Maria Malater and Barb Mason, but they talked about Dr. Malater talked about that Maslow actually had another tier to his hierarchy that like he didn't get to publish,
Oh.
which was transcendence,
Ah.
which makes perfect sense
Mhm.
that that would be the next step, right? And
Mhm.
so to me, that means redefining what success and purpose looks like.
Yes.
And so I think with women in particular, because we're talking about women for the ethos of this podcast, I think we
Mhm.
need to claim and reclaim and restate what that looks like for us and do it as loudly as possible, but not try to restate what happened to us as loudly as possible. It's important to remember, but we got to look forward, not backward.
Right, right. I mean, you all of the talk about trauma right now is that you can either let that happen, and impact you, and you live from it, and you talk about being the victim all the time, or you can learn from it, say that it was
Right.
something that happened for me, and it made me stronger to be able to do this. And that's where I think that what the role that women have to take is like, okay, I mean, for me, like I went through all of this stuff. I feel like I learned a lot from all of the competing with men that I had to do. And now that's given me the opportunity to be here and on this mission that I do believe was handed for me. It was what I was designed and put on this earth to do. And it is to give a voice to women. And it's been like
Yeah.
this long, very challenging, I would almost call it painful process because I had to, I've been married for almost 20 years. Like,
Right.
for my husband to see me go from the person that he met to this person who's climbing the ladder and here's the life we bought into, but like, hey, so that six-figure job that I have, it's not fitting right now, and can I quit? And here's what I'm going to go through. But
Yeah.
the more that I have these conversations with you, with the women that I've been meeting through my podcast and my work, I just know, and I'm excited to wake up every day because we need to give every person has a mission, every person has a purpose, but it's not this like I'm supposed to go to work and make a bunch of money purpose and
Right.
have the house and the car. It's even if you are going to stay in corporate America, because not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur, not everyone's meant to be, in nonprofits or whatever it is, you still
Right.
have a very distinct mission. And maybe working at where you work, you can fulfill that mission. And it could be to help people show up in their gifts if you work in HR, to help change the culture of organizations by a program. And so
Yeah.
one of the parts of my program is like getting very honed in on that narrow lane and helping women become the expert in that lane. Because, like, for example, marketing is huge. Like,
Right.
it's advertising, it's communication, it's branding, it's all of these things. And every company I worked for, I was like, hey guys, we can only handle so much unless you hire more people. And so now coming into the space that I'm in, I'm like, I could do everything marketing, but I don't want to and I shouldn't. So here I'm
Right.
going to stay very focused on the things that I love and that I'm good at. And so that's what we help women do is what is that niche thing that you're so good at?
Smart.
And then exactly. And then the cool thing is that we help them bring along other women in the gifting. So how do you form partnerships so that I'm not great at landing pages, but you know what? I know someone who is. I'm not great at graphic design, but I know someone who is. So now her business is going to thrive, my business is going to thrive, and we're going to partner and all of our voices are going to be elevated.
Yeah.
And that's the transcendence that women can have these days.
Yeah, it's super smart. And I love what you just said about focusing on one thing, right? One niche. Um, because there's this theory about abundance, right?
Mhm.
And people talk about abundance, meaning like we should have abundance in everything. And people think about this a lot. Like the way I look at it is like when you talk about uh like doomsday hoarders, right? Or
Mhm.
like people that, collect a lot of things that they think they're going to need. Now, I can understand this because if like in the event that there was like a natural disaster or something, we pretty much know we're going to need food and water and, medical supplies and like the stuff that we would need, right? But
Sure.
there's a disaster of some kind, like, I don't know, just plug something in because disasters happen all the time, like COVID. We didn't know what the hell we were going to need when a pandemic happens, right? Like we didn't know that the entire like world was going to buy up the entire supply of toilet paper overnight.
That's to my mind too.
Like what the hell? Like what was the other well, hand sanitizer I could kind of see. But like what were some other weird things people were buying up? Like there
Bottled
was
water.
bottled, well, that one I could kind of see, but I mean, people were buying like, there was a weird one around here, toothpaste. People were buying, I was like, toothpaste lasts like 50 years. Toothpaste could survive an atomic bomb going off. I'm pretty sure it's like cockroaches. Like they would just, toothpaste would survive. It's like Twinkies, right? So I was like, people were buying up like really weird stuff. And I was just like, in the event of like a natural disaster, I don't think you're going to need like 6 years worth of toothpaste. I just don't. Like, can you make mortar out of it? Like, is there something I don't know about that it's got some versatile, like maybe they're leveraging it for something? I don't know. But anyway, like, in the event something like that happens, like abundance, right? Um, but realistically, like in the case of business, you don't typically want to do that. You don't
Mhm.
typically want to have that mentality of like,
Right.
I want to just throw a bunch of crap at the wall and see what sticks, right?
Oh, but so many organizations run
But
that way.
so many organizations do that. We're not Amazon. Amazon is the like maybe the one exception to that, and even they have limits. I've heard him talk about that, like
Mhm.
Bezos talk about that. Like, but yeah, no, they're like they talk about this. You're supposed to pick like one thing and be abundant in that one thing at a time
Mhm.
and focus on doing one thing correctly and abundant in that thinking and mastering that one thing and then moving on to the next and then
Yes.
adding that in and then adding more in and adding more in. What we tend to do is our eyes tend to be too big for our stomachs. Hence
Yes.
the concept of the all you can eat buffet. Nobody in their right mind needs that much choices and options in their eating situation, right?
Mhm.
But we
Mhm.
love to go to the all you eat buffet. So it's just one of those things like we as humans for whatever reason think we need to have options of everything, but we
Mhm.
don't. And I
No,
think we
we
get
don't.
caught up in that because for some reason it makes us feel like we're like rich or we're accomplished. We're overly accomplished in what we're doing. That's what it is. It's like we know so much about so many things, like we're Jills of all trade.
Yes.
And
It's
that's not
it
a good way to be,
no, no, not at all. It's
unless you've
this
studied to get to that point, I should say.
well, I mean, even the I can do it all mentality is a big problem with
No, you
perfectionists.
got
It's a
to
big problem
delegate
with
and
women.
collaborate and all of that. Yeah.
Right. And so there's two things that you said there is like the I can do it all mentality. No one is good at everything. Even if you studied to be good at everything, there's no
Right.
way you can study at all. And then
No, of course
this,
not.
right. And then the second thing is that mass consumerism is a huge problem in this country.
Right.
I mean, I've had interns that, are global, and the things that I'm talking about, like I had to like acknowledge the elephant in the room. I was like, okay, you guys, yeah, I know we're having anxiety because we don't get our 1 hour bath and our face cream routine at night because
Right.
we're moms. I was like, but this is legit what people are talking about on social media.
Right.
And let's set aside the social media and who you have to be because, by the way, going back to your earlier conversation, is all of that curating on your social feed, it has caused a lot of people not to be able to leave the house because they're not that person. And so they've set up this situation where, I mean, there are 16-year-olds who don't want to get their driver's license because if they leave the house, people know that, their skin isn't that clear or that
Right.
their hair doesn't actually have blonde streaks or whatever it is.
Right.
And so this authenticity conversation is really important. This mass consumerism conversation. You don't need all of that stuff. You can't take it with you. It doesn't matter. When you look back at a happy life, is it going to be the people that you spent time with and the
Right.
quality of that time? Because when I was working 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., I came home and even though my quality time was the weekends and dinner, I was an angry mess and I was constantly had one eye on my phone or my laptop.
Yeah.
So it all of these it really part of this evaluation is like what are those core values and then what are you placing as important goals? Because if it's to
Yes.
have a lot of stuff, then well, first of all, I can't help you. you know,
Yeah.
because
I'm
it's
not the
just not.
one. We got to purge.
But there are a lot of things that are really important in life other than having the stuff and the toilet, and COVID was a great example of like
Yep.
going nutso for toilet paper. I mean, you could have gotten some leaves.
Right.
Worst
Yeah.
case.
I mean,
People
pretty sure
survived for toilet paper.
it's not vital to our existence. It's like a luxury.
Hmm.
We've gotten used to having it. Just like, like power, the power could go out tomorrow, like just, and that it would really like it would screw up a lot of stuff, but we could survive without it for a while. And I'm pretty sure like we could we could figure it out. Like we're
Hmm.
smart. We could reverse engineer something because we've lived without power before, right?
Hmm.
It's when you have to like come up with new stuff in a hurry
Hmm.
that's really like frightening, right? When
Hmm.
you don't know the answer. I think that's what freaks people out about AI
Hmm.
is we can reverse engineer stuff backwards, right?
Hmm.
It's with AI, we don't know what's coming.
Right.
So we can't like reverse engineer, like we don't have that like visibility of it. So it's like I don't know if I'm going to be able to like reverse engineer. I don't know. There's just so much like weird stuff about it that's unknown. And so it creates that anxiety, but I think um we have to just keep pressing forward and we have to prioritize and we have to know what our values are, who we are, and we have to plan around those things that we have immediate control over and know that I guess it comes down to the age old, you got to kind of have faith in yourself that if you're, making the next indicated step, then you're taking a risk like anything else in life.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
really what
let's
it
talk.
comes down to.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that AI thing for a second, because if you don't, all of this stuff that we're talking about is it's all born out of fear, and that's the thing that holds all of us back.
Yep.
And so, if you're afraid of AI, you're afraid of it taking your job. Well, if you don't build those foundational skills of like, who am I? What am I doing here? What am I really good at? And being able to connect with humans, because that's the one thing that AI can't do. It cannot connect. And there are plenty of really sad stories when
Yep.
people have tried to develop a connection with AI and what happens
Right.
because of it's a machine.
Right.
So if you don't get really good and solid in who you are and being able to connect with people on that level, you're not going to be able to partner with AI to do your job. So yes, it's going to take your job.
Right.
And no, and it could even take your job if you learn how to use it, but you don't know how to connect with people, because you have to have those two things to be able to function in an organization and be able to say, hey, yeah, I'm the guy who knows girl that knows how to do AI, and here's what I can do with it. If you can't have
Right.
that conversation, you're just going to be in the basement playing with your computer.
Right.
So, I mean, it's the whole fundamental part of like being human and is letting go of fear and then saying, who am I? What do I stand for? And stand up for that every single day.
Yep.
And then we wouldn't be in the place that we are because everybody would be partnering and interested and open to new perspectives and connecting instead of being like in this like competitive spirit where it's like racing for the dollar. Well, if AI takes all of our jobs and it keeps going the way it's going, dollars aren't going to matter.
No, not so much.
So,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we have to look at what we have to take a look at what not what our merit is. We have to look at who we are, right? Because that's what it's going to be based on. I don't know that we'll ever go back to a place of merit-based hiring completely or any of the stuff they want to do. I think where we're going to see people really excel is where we see the difference between people who are willing to take challenges, disruption like AI, because there's always going to be disruption, right?
of course,
Always,
of course.
always. Um,
Internet.
but yeah, they look at whether they want to be process focused, which is a stability based situation, or they want to be outcome focused, which is a agility based situation.
Mhm,
And there is somewhere in between there you've got to figure out where to exist right now because it's
mhm,
literally you cannot swing the pendulum either way. You got to find the
mhm,
sensible middle.
mhm.
Hashtag, which is we decided my new hashtag, I'm going to get tattooed across my forehead. Hashtag sensible middle
Right.
because no one is living there right now. And it seems like we're just doing this, like
Mhm,
swinging a pendulum in everything we do. And we've got to find that middle ground because what we have to look at, I believe, is what our jobs are going to look at or look like post AI. So
yeah.
think about what our jobs need to evolve into post
Mhm,
AI. Because if you want to leverage and make yourself valuable to your organization or to the workforce or society or whatever the case may be, we have to look at how we evolve ourselves and how we
yeah.
evolve ourselves into a workforce that incorporates technology, embraces it, and does so in ways that we can leverage it and teach it to other people and have it continue to scale, but also how we continue to scale alongside of it, not
Mhm,
just
mhm.
stick our heads in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Because that train's going to run you over if it hasn't already,
Right.
with that type of mentality. So
Right.
I know we're about out of time, but Dani, tell me in the last like little bit we have here, working with women leaders in this shift, because it's shifting, and I'm glad it's shifting. I'm glad we're having these conversations finally.
Mhm.
But how or what would you say to a woman in leadership that needs to shift her mentality from I must prove I'm worthy to I know I'm worthy?
That's a great question. And so what I would say is start working on yourself inside. Like what do you stand for? What are your core values? What do you love to do? What are you good at? What do you hate?
Yeah,
And make space to have those conversations with yourself. And I want to also note is the conversation that you have with yourself in your head needs to be a positive one, even if there are things that you hate or you don't like about yourself, is kind of like really shape those because one of the exercises that I have my clients do is go back and look at your past. This was really important for me. I defined a lot of things as failure, a lot of the things that I thought I wasn't good at. And when I started to like look and flip them on their heads, it wasn't that I either wasn't good at it, it's that either I didn't have enough training or lo and behold, I let someone else take the reins because I was too scared to step into that. And
yeah,
so that if you're a female leader, that's the exercises that you can do for yourself. But obviously, if you're a leader, you're managing a team, you're influencing people. And by the way, you don't have to be an executive to be a leader. You can be a leader in whatever space you're in. And as women, we tend to be leaders in our communities. We're leading our households. So you're influencing people. And so you want to look and say, how can I bring value to the people in my lives? And it doesn't have to be exhausting because that's where the help versus value comes in. And
right.
so when you say, how can I bring value? Is it, that you're able to have a conversation with someone so that they can understand their gifts better and have that conversation of how they show up, making a safe space for them to talk about the things that aren't going well and then help them flip it on its head. You don't, sometimes for women, it's saying no does as much as saying yes. You don't have to bake the cupcakes for the thing at school. You don't have to do this or do that. Like,
You're right.
be very conscious about what you say no to as much as what you say yes to. And is what you're saying yes to bringing value? And when you help
Right.
others show up as their authentic selves, you can show up as your authentic self. And if you're in a workplace that's not going to value that, start forming allies out to your left and your right, because I guarantee you there are other people that feel the same way that you do. And you'll start to realize where are the real problems, and you'll have a group sitting at that table having this conversation, and it won't just be this one against many. And I think things will unfold from there, because there is something to that woo attraction thing, but
Yeah.
it's all the stuff that you have going on in here and the action that you take with it once it gets to that good place of like, yes, this is who I am and this is how I get to show up.
Awesome. Great answer. Awesome.
Thanks.
Well,
Thanks.
Dani, thank you again so much for being here with us. Dani Cee, you can find her on LinkedIn, but it's under Danielle Torick on LinkedIn, right?
Yes, but I do have Dani Cee in the other name, so
In
it
the
should come up in the searches as well.
Cool, awesome. And then speaker, brand strategist, founder and CEO of the Happy Life Agency. It's happylifeagency.co.
Yes.
And then working on a book as well that is going to be coming out hopefully in 2016 or 2026.
I
Here
wish.
I am 10 years. She wrote a book 10 years ago, hasn't come out yet. No, just kidding. In 2026, you'll be writing a book. Hopefully
Yes.
that will be released. So love to have you back on, and talk about that eventually. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, you're available for one-on-one work, organizational work, and yeah, any other plugs that you wanted to make about the business?
Yeah, I do. I want to say I am working on a program that is for anyone. The job market is tough. And
Yeah,
so working on a program, I volunteer at the women's shelter, and I see it firsthand. So I'm working on a program that will help you, show up as your authentic self so you can land that next job, because there is a lot of personal branding that can go into helping you land your next job and the job that you love, not just any job. And that's really important to getting a job these days.
yeah.
So I'll have that coming soon. So it's happylifeagency.co to get that information. And then, of course, happylifeagenda.com, where you can get all the free resources, the blog, the podcast. And of course, I'll have all of that information and subscribe to my newsletter. So thank you, Emily, for what you're
Yeah,
doing in these
thank you.
conversations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dani. As always, anybody that we have on is a resource. If you want to reach out to anybody, you can contact us directly, and we'll hook you up either through my LinkedIn or email us. But Dani Cee, thank you again so much for being on the show. It was an absolute pleasure having you here, and can't wait for our next conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Emily. Have a great one.
Yeah, have a great rest of your week.
As I reflect on this conversation with Dani, I keep coming back to something she said that really resonates. When you help others show up as their authentic selves, you can show up as your authentic self. That's the ripple effect we're talking about here. It's not just about individual transformation, though that's incredibly powerful. It's about creating a culture where authenticity becomes the norm, not the exception. 3 things from this conversation that I hope will stay with you. First, that the shift from proving your worth to knowing your worth starts with getting clear on your core values and having honest conversations with yourself. Second, that bringing value is different from just helping. It's about being intentional and specific about the impact you want to make. And third, that in a world increasingly dominated by AI, our ability to connect authentically with other humans becomes our greatest asset. Dani's work reminds us that we don't have to choose between success and authenticity. In fact, the most sustainable success comes from aligning who we are with what we do. Whether you're climbing the corporate ladder or building your own path, the foundation remains the same. Know your values, trust your voice, and don't be afraid to take up space. If this conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to connect with Dani at happylifeagency.com. She's developing programs to help people land jobs they love. And remember, as we navigate this changing landscape of work and leadership, the goal isn't to swing the pendulum from one extreme to another. It's to find that sensible middle where we can be both successful and authentic, both ambitious and human. Thanks for listening to Talent Talks.